Panorama. We go undercover to expose the bailiffs bringing misery to motorists.
I was in shock, I really was. I mean, I couldn't believe that parking tickets had gone up that much.
We investigate how £65 fines can spiral out of control.
£567, actually £777.
What starts out as a very small issue quickly ramps up into something that is, can destroy people's lives.
And then you have removal costs, and then you have storage costs, and you've got over £1,000.
And can end with your car being taken to pay off the debt.
And he said he's going to seize my BMW over a bus lane ticket.
As new government rules come into force, we ask, will they really stop bailiffs who behave like this?
I'm going to take the microwave, OK, I'll take the fish tanks. I'll come back and take the paint off your walls as well. I'll leave you with nothing.
Parking is big business, with town halls in England raking in nearly £1 billion a year, a third of it from parking fines. Meet Britain's parking bailiffs. They're hired by councils to make sure that motorists who notch up parking tickets don't get away scot-free. The firms they work for are worth big money, and the bailiffs can turn a tidy penny too.
This job, if you do it right, I mean, the week leading up to Christmas, I took £2 grand for myself in 1 week.
Bailiffs say it's a difficult job. They've got to be ready for abuse and worse. They say they can be trusted to do it fair and square, keeping to the rules that govern how much they can charge for collecting debts. But we've been handed a hefty file of documents, a detailed breakdown of bailiff fees, which raises concerns about the fees being charged by some of Britain's leading bailiff companies. It highlights several bailiff firms, including Equita, JBW and Newlyn. The file details the company's debt enforcement in 10 councils across London and the South East. We wanted to see for ourselves what was going on, so we sent in an undercover journalist.
Hey, mate. Thanks, buddy.
He got a job as a trainee with JBW, an award-winning bailiff firm based in Darlington.
Roger, hi, I'm here from the bailiff's office.
This is JBW's boss, Jamie Waller. He's become something of a celebrity. Here he is on daytime telly. He's also a cheerleader for the industry.
Our strapline is a trusted approach. What we say is actually, if you employ our services, we will do the right thing.
The bailiff showing off JBW's trusted approach is this man, John Yangu.
So I'm a certificated bailiff from the court, so I'm not a cowboy, OK?
John, a JBW contractor, is supposed to stick to national guidelines. He's going to teach our undercover the tricks of the trade. Over a month, they make almost 200 visits.
Where are you at with this? Is this like your first time?
This is my first time.
First time. Oh look, there's another clamper. Go for it, mate, go for it.
In a quarter of a mile, turn left onto Pretender Road.
He'll learn where to make money.
Look at the fees on this one. So if you collect on this one, you make about 120 quid.
How to clamp a car. And how to make debtors pay up.
I give the impression to people that I'm going to take things. Quite nasty, actually, but it's the only effective way that it works, sort of thing.
Meet Keith Greenaway, minicab driver. He's found out the hard way how some bailiffs operate. Keith has 3 outstanding parking tickets worth £55 each. He mistakenly thought the council had torn them up following an appeal last autumn. In February this year, John Yangu and our undercover paid Keith a visit. Bailiffs start early so they can catch people at home. And by about 7 o'clock, the bailiff has clamped Keith's minicab. JBW bailiffs are given a handheld device which records every visit. It also tells them how much to charge debtors like Keith.
I'm from JBW. We've just clamped your car. Can we come upstairs to see you, sir?
Keith works late shifts and has barely had time to put his trousers on before the bailiff comes in.
Hi there, sir. Do you want to hear the bad news or the bad news, mate?
I'm getting yours. What's the bad news?
It's £1,830. Each ticket here, sir, they're £610.24 each, okay?
I was in shock, I really was. I mean, I couldn't believe the parking tickets had gone up that much. I was expecting maybe twice, something like £180, £200 per ticket.
Is there a way you can settle one or two of them?
I haven't got any money, mate. I've had 3 operations this year. I'm now starting treatment for cancer, and I'm bollocksed.
Keith is being treated for skin cancer, and he says he's had lengthy spells off work to recover from a series of eye operations.
So, I mean, what I want to do, ideally, is to clear something out of these so I can release the clamp. I don't want to take your car away.
If you take it,
Yeah.
right, I can't earn any money.
That's what I'm trying to compromise with.
I mean, this is 7 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know what they were allowed to do. All I knew was if they took the car away, I'd be unemployed.
So how did Keith's bill go up from free £55 tickets to more than £1,800? JBW says this was the 3rd time a bailiff had visited Keith. On each of the free visits, JBW has tripled most of the fees it charges. This is called multiple charging. It's allowed, but is it fair? Where multiple fees had been charged for a council tax debt, the local government ombudsman said that placed a wholly unreasonable burden on people already in debt. John the bailiff is paid on commission, a 40% cut from some of the fees he collects for JBW. If the debtor doesn't pay up, he doesn't get paid.
Is there anyone who can help you, friends or family? Do you want to make a couple of phone calls? It's better to owe mates than to owe us, mate.
I made downstairs tonight do it, but I ain't sure.
If you want to go and ask him, mate.
It's a bit early, isn't it, mate?
Keith has made it clear that as a result of ill health, he's struggling to pay. Under government guidelines, which do allow John some discretion, he should tell the council that Keith is a potentially vulnerable debtor, but he doesn't. If Keith is to get the clamp off his cab, he needs some money, so he asks his neighbour, Steve, to help.
Steve, terrible, mate. Can you do us a favour? Can you lend us £610? I'm upstairs. I'll bring the guys down, OK?
His neighbour pays off one of the tickets for £610.
I'll never get this back there, will I?
Yes, you will.
Keith still owes £1,200, so John calls head office to ask about a monthly payment plan. But John says at this stage they don't seem willing to help.
He's having treatment for skin cancer and he's a mini cab driver. He needs a car to work. So is JBW willing to do that or not? Have you got proof of your treatments, sir? So we can upload that as well. I'll call you back once we've found something, okay? Right, mate, they're not willing to take £100 a month.
I can't do any more than that at the moment, mate, because I'm skinned.
The bailiff finally agrees to unclamp the minicab. What Keith wasn't told is that bailiffs are forbidden from removing a debtor's tools of trade, in this case, Keith's minicab. John knew this all along, but clamped it nonetheless, so that he could use it as a bargaining tool.
And you are content of the cab. They're sort of protected because they need it to work. I didn't tell him that. So the W just said it to me. Is it a minicab or a cab? I said it's a minicab. But I thought, bloody can't take the card. And I said, no, I can't. Made 133 quid out of that one, mate.
3 weeks later, JBW put Keith on a monthly repayment plan. Citizens' Advice questioned 350 parking ticket debtors about the bailiff industry. 1 in 3 said bailiffs had threatened force. A quarter were told that items would be taken that didn't belong to the debtor.
We found that people were scared and intimidated routinely by bailiffs, that what starts out as a very small issue quickly ramps up into something that is, can destroy people's lives.
John Yangu, meanwhile, is looking for a motorist who owes more than £1,000 for 2 parking fines.
There's somebody there. Hello there, madam, from JBW. I'm looking for Mr. He has to pay £1,107.
The woman tells John that the debtor is out of the country.
Madam, I have to come in.
She doesn't speak English, so a neighbour offers to translate. Our undercover points out a letter from the DVLA addressed to the debtor, but it's not there when John goes to look at it.
There was a letter on top of the microwave, the DVLA letter. Where is it? It's been taken away. Show me the letters. I can't buy that. Sorry.
By law, only the debtor can be made to pay, but ignoring the rules, John demands more than £500 and threatens to remove goods.
You have to pay money now. Otherwise, I take television. My television. You have receipt?
When she insists she has no money, John gets angry.
Don't wind me up, madam, all right? Tell her not to take the piss, mate. It'll get worse for her. Basically, I'm not going to leave on with nothing here. I'm going to take the microwave, okay? I'll take the fish tanks.
My money, no.
Taking the piss, yeah.
Then John appears to think she's just been rude to him.
I'll come back and take the paint off your walls as well, okay? I'll leave you with nothing. Don't take the piss out of me.
Sorry, no problem.
No, I will be back. And I will be back at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I will come and take everything.
John the bailiff finishes off with some choice words about the family he's just intimidated.
Now you get what I mean about like flux of to come over. They're nasty bits of work. Yeah.
Back in the van, the bailiff tells the undercover that his behaviour should serve as a lesson in how to do the job.
Part of the reason I've done all that was for you to see how we enforce as well. Yeah.
John's handheld device is supposed to record the whole visit, but not this time.
Well, no, when I lost it with her there, I made sure that weren't recorded. I should just let bailiffs get down to their address. People like that, they wind you up big time.
People are very often very frightened by bailiffs. That is partly to do with their physical presence, but much more often it's to do with just deliberately aggressive and threatening behaviour.
But it's not just the behaviour of individual bailiffs that's causing concern. It's what some bailiffs charge for. There are laws governing bailiffs' fees, but they can be difficult for the debtor to understand. Biker Andrew Stapley is with the campaign group The No 2 Mob. They've uncovered evidence of just how big some bailiffs' bills can be. They're exploiting a little-known law to compel local authorities to hand over sample invoices detailing the fees charged by bailiff companies working for the councils. This is the upshot of the No 2 Mob's work. Bills from the bailiff companies to motorists who haven't paid their parking fines. Now, some of these bills can run up to hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds. Here's one from Newlyn for £2,244.20p. The bailiff companies say their charges are lawful and reasonable, but some motorists use one word to describe bailiff charges: disproportionate. Andrew Stapley has also helped the No 2 Mob uncover evidence of charges they believe to be wrong.
We was really scrutinising the contracts, and we went on to the bailiff contracts and about how they was just carrying out their business and doing their work, and we just found things that were wrong, double charges or incorrect charges.
Some of the concerns were about fees charged on the bailiff's first visit. This should be an opportunity for debtors to settle the fine. Meet Steve Hobart from Essex. He owns a fleet of black cabs. When one of his drivers failed to settle a ticket, a man from the bailiff firm Equita turned up at his door demanding payment. The visit was recorded on Steve's CCTV.
I answered the door. And when he turned around and said to me £667, I could have fallen over. The original fine was for £60.
Steve wanted to know how the bill could be so high.
He said to me, he's not there to explain why, he's just there to collect the money.
Steve asked for a breakdown of the fees from Equitas head office. Included in the bill was a £260 charge for sending a van to take away his goods. So where was the van? So what are we expecting to see here, Steve?
We'd expect to see a truck capable of removing a 2-ton taxi or taking away household goods to meet the value of their charges. Here he arrived, here he comes. This is our bailiff.
I'm not Jeremy Clarkson, but that's no tow truck. That's a car. He'd be lucky to get a telly in there, wouldn't he?
Not even fitted with a roof rack.
So, why did you pay the bill?
I paid it under duress. The threat of them coming in and removing goods. In the end, I paid it just so I could put an end to the matter.
Equitas says all its fees and charges are applied according to the law, agreed client guidelines and industry best practice. But it's when bailiffs take your car that things can go from bad to worse. Motorists can be charged for removing and selling their cars to pay off the debt. And these charges can rapidly escalate, costing the motorist thousands of pounds. John the bailiff and our undercover are still working the streets of London.
Here you go. Hello. Good morning, sir. I'm from JBW. Yeah.
John is pursuing a debt for a parking ticket.
Okay, if I leave a letter with you, will you hand it to her? No. No? No, you leave a letter box, you can do what you want, but can't leave no letter. No problem, mate, no problem. We'll see who wins and loses, come on.
There's a reason the man behind the door isn't being friendly to a bailiff.
No problem. Stir it up a bit, right? What you do?
The ticket has already been paid, but Laurent Howes is in a long-running dispute with his council over a series of other tickets. Laurent is a full-time volunteer at a swan sanctuary.
Come on, fella. Yep. Bottle top, usual kind of thing that we get over here. There you go.
Every day, he crosses London in his veterinary ambulance.
So I could get calls from anyone, the police, rail track, Thames Water. Fortunately, with my van being an ambulance, I can use the bus lanes to get to where I've got to go. Say in the rush hour, I've got an Indian swan in the back.
Ambulances on official business are allowed to use the capital's bus lanes by law, and Laurent's vehicle is taxed and registered as an ambulance. Yet one London borough repeatedly fines him. Barking and Dagenham Council issued the first ticket in 2009, and more followed.
I went back to the council and said that, you're sending me these bus lane tickets, you're wasting money actually doing this, just knock some heads together and see if you can sort the problem out for me.
What happened?
Nothing. The bus lane tickets just kept coming.
At least 30 tickets were issued over the next few years. And while some were cancelled or waived, 3 were passed to JBW. By June last year, the company was demanding more than £2,000, so it sent one of its bailiffs to his house.
And he said he's going to seize my BMW over a bus lane ticket for my veterinary ambulance. So we had a little bit of a dispute about it.
You've got no right to park in front of my drive. Get your van off my property. All right? You're not going to do it. All right, I'll call the police.
The incident was filmed on Laurent's mobile phone.
The police, please.
With the bailiff refusing to move, Laurent hoped the police would intervene to resolve the dispute.
The police, who I thought was there to help me, actually came into my home and put me in handcuffs.
When you said to me you're not going to break the police.
I'm not, honestly.
Because they need to take cars.
Official police guidance makes it clear that officers should not help bailiffs remove people's goods. But Laurent says the 2 officers refused to release him until he agreed to let the bailiff move its tow truck onto the driveway and take his car.
I'm a law-abiding citizen.
I'm not saying you're not.
And you've allowed this to happen.
The bailiff took Lawrence BMW, worth around £15,000, to pay for free disputed tickets. The car was sold for just over £12,000. JBW took a hefty £3,490. Laurent felt that more than 1,600 of the fees and charges hadn't been properly explained.
The debt's just, it's impossible.
It's impossible to work out.
It's
impossible.
JBW says it did provide a breakdown of the fees, and Mr. Howes didn't ask for them to be broken down further. It says its bailiff complied with all relevant obligations in his dealings with Mr. Howes. The Metropolitan Police said the incident was being investigated as part of a civil complaint made by the family, and it was unable to comment. Laurent Howes is not the only motorist to face steep bills after failing to pay a ticket. The invoices obtained by the No2 mob shine a light on the fees motorists are charged by the bailiff companies once their cars have been removed. Take this invoice from JBW. For storage, that means garaging, £420 plus VAT. For getting keys cut, £180 plus VAT. The whole bill tops up to almost £2,000. Now, the bailiff companies say their charges are fair and reasonable, but motorists say, oh no, they're not. The law sets out that the charges for removing and selling cars should be reasonable, but it's left the courts to define what this means in practice. If it's the councils that are hiring the bailiffs to collect unpaid parking fines, shouldn't they ensure that motorists are being treated fairly? The No2 mob, which has been investigating bailiff fees, says the councils aren't doing enough to check up on the bailiffs.
They're getting away with it simply because nobody's looking at them. Nobody's monitoring what they do.
But one council acted on the campaign group's findings and suspended JBW.
They were acting outside of the rules and regulations, and they were charging for things that they didn't actually do, and were charging for things which they're not entitled to do as well.
The council said it made JBW return £13,000 to motorists who had been overcharged. The company was reinstated after a month. So, as we speak, JBW is still collecting debts for Hackney Council?
Yes, that's correct. But be no doubt, if we hear instances of this happening again, we will suspend the contract, we will investigate, and if needs be, we will terminate that contract.
JBW disputes Hackney's version of events. But what happens when councils fail to hold bailiff companies to account? Who do motorists turn to if they believe bailiffs are in the wrong?
I think most people who are in the position of being up against bailiffs are in a very vulnerable position. For starters, they don't understand the law necessarily, and they're in a terrible position to push back because it's hard for ordinary people to sue the bailiffs, for example, or take other action.
Laurent Howes had already lost one car, but the tickets for driving his ambulance in bus lanes kept coming. In February, he started getting visits from another bailiff company, Newlyn. Its bailiff, Robert Kaminski, was demanding more than £1,500 for 3 tickets.
He said he was there to seize the ambulance, and he actually said that he was going to take not only my ambulance, but he's also going to take my wife's car as well.
I then said to him, you're not going to be seizing my car is in my name. It has nothing to do with the ambulance, and it has nothing to do with my husband, it's solely my car.
We all need our cars. Beverly uses hers for work. She helps victims of domestic violence.
And then the next thing I know, he's put my ambulance on the tow truck, and then I looked out and he's pushing my wife's car out into the street.
Laurent's ambulance is essential to his voluntary work. As a tool of trade, it should not have been taken by the bailiff. Nor was the bailiff allowed by law to take Beverly's car. She's not the debtor. Mr. Kaminski says he was legally entitled to remove her car as he reasonably believed it belonged to her husband. Newlin says its bailiff acted within the law in his dealings with the couple.
Just went away with them. Haven't heard anything since. Absolutely nothing. So we don't know where our vehicles are.
The Howes reported the bailiff to the police and they appealed to the bailiff company, but in vain. When I meet with the Howes, they still don't know the whereabouts of Beverly's car or the Swan ambulance, so they call the bailiff, Mr. Kaminsky.
Hello, Mr. Kowinski. I'd like to know what you've done with our cars.
Okay, 2 cars from the driveway, yes, I remember. So as I know, your car, van, has been sold already.
Who sold it?
The towing company.
The towing company sold my van.
Yes, with permission from our company.
Okay, Mr. Kaminsky, it's Mrs. House here. In regards to my Vauxhall, what do I need to do to get my car back? And where is it?
To be honest, I don't know. I'm able to seize any goods at debtor property. Simple as that.
The Howes have now had 2 cars and an ambulance seized from them, with a total value of more than £30,000 over disputed tickets. Barking and Dagenham Council says both bailiff companies acted properly and that it was right to enforce payment against Mr. Howes, as he had not always provided a defence or adequate grounds for exemption. For our undercover, after 12 days as a trainee bailiff, it was the end of the road. He was sacked. JBW said he was unsuitable for the role. Yesterday, the government brought in new rules limiting the powers of bailiffs. There's also a new simplified fee structure, but the first visit will be more costly. Debtors will now pay, with the fine, as much as £500.
There are some small improvements, but the gaping hole in this is a lack of regulation. So we want to see a much stronger, independent, tough regulator.
So will there be an independent regulator?
My responsibility is to say to local authorities that if you are employing bailiffs, that you should employ them in an ethical and reasonable way, that you should look in terms of fines to be reasonable towards the motorists.
But that's wonderful, Mr. Pickles, but unless you have a regulator, all of this is pie in the sky.
That's something that the Justice Secretary will address.
The Ministry of Justice has told us there are currently no plans for a regulator. Following our investigation, John Yangu was suspended by JBW.
Mr. Houston, you have to pay money now. Otherwise, I take television.
The company says, as a self-employed contractor, he was acting outside its policies and procedures. It says it's apologised to 3 people whose cases were raised by Panorama. Mr. Yangu told us he takes personal responsibility for the isolated comments made. Newlin have told us that Mrs. Howe's car will be returned. But the veterinary ambulance, Laurent has given up all hope of ever getting it back. And on Thursday, don't cut my benefits.
I'm only there for a year and I can be uprooted all over again to come back to London. It doesn't make any kind of sense.
A Panorama special on the front line of Britain's benefit reforms.